us with more details on what we can expect. Good morning, Ranvir.
Well, the Prime Minister is likely to tell MPs and indeed all of us that it is now time for us to understand that we need to learn to live with COVID and that vaccines are going to be, as we were told when the vaccine programme started, that getting jabbed is the government's view the main defence against a new surge in COVID. Now, as of September the 11th, around 44 million of us had already had our second doses. And there is also yet still outstanding a decision to be made on whether 12 to 15-year-olds should be jabbed. Now, there is some concern over this because the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation have said that the margin of benefit from vaccinating healthy children was too small to say that they should receive a jab. And yet the government is still holding out on that decision. There is also, of course, a massive U-turn on the use of vaccine passports, which will come as a huge relief to nightclubs and other people trying to organise mass gathering events. There was, of course, a big push for those vaccine passports, but an awful lot of disquiet among Tory MPs, and so that now will not go ahead. Here's John Ashworth, who is the Shadow Health Secretary.
I'm not surprised that they've U-turned on it, but only last week they were saying that they were definitely going ahead. So that is a bit of that does suggest a bit of chaos there. But the main thing is that we are vigilant this winter, that our NHS is prepared.
Number 10 have also confirmed, in fact, that they're going to start repealing some of those laws, those emergency laws that allowed the government to close down the economy, to restrict access to schools, to detain infectious people, all of those very stringent rules that were very, very worrying in terms of civil liberties, but we did live through them. Those sort of rules and those acts are now going to be repealed by the government. There's also a push by Sajid Javid to get rid completely of the PCR tests, those expensive ones that you need when you go on holiday and so on, and replace them with those free lateral flow tests, and also having for the traffic light system for that also to be scrapped. Now, the British Medical Association is saying actually we're not sure that repealing everything, getting rid of all the restrictions, getting rid of all the rules is the right way forward. Now, these decisions here by Number 10, of course, do mean that England is now diverging from the rules in Scotland and indeed in Wales. In Scotland, a motion was passed on Thursday around the vaccine passports. Nicola Sturgeon saying they'll use them in very limited circumstances. There's still a decision to be made in Wales. But of course, here in England, I guess that for many, there will be some sighs of relief that there is truly a getting back to normal in terms of civil liberties.
Ranvir, thanks very much.
He's going to say that we need to learn to live with COVID and that vaccines are our main defence from it. As of Saturday, government data shows that almost 44 million people have had both doses of one or other of the vaccines available. There is still yet to be a decision made, though, on the vaccination of 12 to 15-year-olds. This is after the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation said that the margin of benefit from vaccinating healthy children was too small to say that they should receive a jab, and yet for many parents and others there is concern that the government is still leaving that door open, even though the science isn't quite there yet. The other side of what's been going on is, of course, the fact that there's been a huge U-turn on the use of vaccine passports. Of course, there was a big push towards this time of year in September, as the universities go back, that going into nightclubs and large gatherings you would need to have a vaccine, a COVID passport. Now there's been a U-turn on that. That's totally been scrapped, and John Ashworth, who's the Shadow Health Secretary, says it just shows the sort of chaos that they believe is happening in Number 10 over this pandemic. Also, what's going to happen, we're expecting, is that Number 10 will repeal some of the laws that were emergency laws that were brought in under the Coronavirus Act that allowed them to close down the economy, allowed us to detain infectious people, to restrict access to school and other gatherings. Those sorts of restrictions, we understand, will now totally go, including, of course, the PCR test. That's another thing that, of course, has caused a lot of problems for people because they're very expensive but very effective, of course. Sajid Javid keen to get rid of those, and indeed the traffic light system. But the British Medical Association is saying that actually this may be all too quick because there may well be another surge this autumn. And all these changes that bring back civil liberties will, of course, give many people in industry and in general life a great sigh of relief. But others, for example, in Scotland and in Wales, are going a different direction. There's been a law passed there that they may well include vaccine passports in Scotland for certain gatherings. Wales is yet to decide, as well as Northern Ireland. But I think for many in England, there will be a sign that actually life truly is starting to get back to normal.
Ranvir, thanks very much.
See the ending of the idea of vaccine passports, that the laws that allowed the government to close down the economy, to restrict access to schools and large events could well be repealed. And indeed, there is still a big question over whether 12 to 15-year-olds will be made to be double jabbed. But PCR tests for those who are may well be the end of those two. There's lots of big questions of how Boris Johnson will say that we all need to learn to live with COVID this winter.